As you've no doubt already appreciated, the topic of this unit is huge. It extends from the National Organisational Framework for Vocational Education, the curriculum, the teachers and their practices, and into the connections and relationships with the adjacent educational frameworks. Quite clearly, as we have seen from both our professional experience opportunities and our work in other units, the absence of proper planning, consideration of literacy and numeracy in other than specialised subjects, and the diagnosis of learning difficulties all impact on the students who walk in your classroom. It's an immensely tall order to hope that all aspects of the quality and evaluation process will work together. Experience with bureaucracy and just human frailty suggests that perfection is an objective rather than a possibility. However, this is not a cause for despair, but rather an incentive for us to influence as strongly as possible those factors within our control, because if we all contribute, then the potential for the success of our students increases exponentially. When you look at the readings, you'll identify a constant tension between the professional and educational skills of the teacher. Namely, what society is trying to do is bring high-quality practitioners in to teach. However, the best on-the-job person might not be the best teacher, and the best teacher might not have been the best on the job. The problem is even more compounded by the fact that the TAA was developed as a workplace qualification and then became the de facto teaching qualification for the vocational area. This isn't surprising when you think of it. If we look back into the not-so-distant past when I was growing up, apprenticeship was the norm, following on from hundreds of years of workplace-based learning. I would argue that the transition from that to what we have currently here now is the result of economic change, namely the appearance of a whole range of new skilled professions, social change with increased urbanisation, increased movement, meaning that the apprentices no longer stayed in the village or town, but moved around and thus had to prove their capability. And lastly, increased regulation. This last point flows from the same pressures that are placed on school education. Industry says this and industry wants that, and industry wants to have a standard against which it can regulate wages on a national level. You could also add in the major change of occupational health and safety, as well as the more recent and increasingly expanding corporate liability issue. When comparing the role of school teacher to vocational education teacher, the preparation for entry to the classroom is significantly different. Whilst there is the argument that school teachers deal with humans at a lesser stage of development and that the school teacher preparation might include a whole lot of theoretical stuff that may indeed be left behind at graduation, the actual mechanics of teaching still take time to master, and the time for TAA/TAE is substantially less. Partly this might stem from the expectation that vocational practitioners know their stuff and have a rich reservoir of practical field experience. Since we're looking critically at the issues in this unit, I'm going to pose some thoughts or impressions that you might agree or disagree with. So please feel free to contribute to the discussion as you work through the references and discussion boards. To start us off, might it be that the view is that vocational educators don't need to get so deeply into issues of pedagogy because the packages and associated CBT are seen as organising teacher variability out of the equation? Namely, if all that's required is to deliver the package, then much of the thinking is taken out. From a bureaucratic perspective, this is ideal since the process can be mapped and correlated from package to audit. If this is the case, then there is a nefarious dimension here. It assumes that improvements in teaching will flow automatically from updating of the package. So there's no need to further improve teacher pedagogy since improvement is built in. Concurrently, whilst a vocational education teacher might be updating their professional skills regularly to stay current and industry relevant, the same might not be occurring with their educational skills. However, the issue of teacher learning is not unique to vocational education. Most school teachers don't engage in effective professional learning, they don't read professional journals, and they don't return for further university studies. However, with a less demanding entry qualification to teach, one can ask what is the potential for enhanced quality of teaching in vocational education. Indeed, one could ask whether it matters or is valued at all. Furthermore, can we expect the vocational education sector, and note that education is part of the term itself, to improve in the absence of an informed, pedagogical dialogue. The schools have the benefit of all the educational faculties researching away for them. The research effort in VET would seem considerably less, despite its significant place in the educational landscape. Because this unit is about quality and evaluation, we can and should ask questions such as, if TAE is sufficient to enter teaching in the vocational education sector, and if professional learning is not focused on pedagogy, then how can we tell whether we are teaching well? Next, is audit and compliance of itself sufficient to meet the critical demand of quality? And if so, do we know that the evaluation mechanisms such as audit can distinguish between educational process and pedagogy and respond to the demands of the latter if they're found wanting? Next, can we say that there is a pedagogy-focused evaluation culture in vocational education? Or is this subsumed by compliance pressures? In fact, am I making too much of a mountain out of a molehill? Is the quality and development of pedagogy less of an issue in vocational education? As I mentioned before, the vocational education sector is not alone, but it is where we are focused in this unit. So, time to move into the topic. As usual, there are readings and questions for you to address in the discussions. Also, we'll have a webinar discussion at the start of week 3, probably on the evening of 1st December, where you'll be encouraged to contribute and to share with colleagues. In preparation for this, you might like to think about putting some thoughts on 2 PowerPoint slides. I'll combine these and give everyone a chance to have a couple of minutes speaking in the webinar, and we'll try to run it like a virtual tutorial, rather than the guy at this end being the talking monkey for the whole time.